It's Talkin Nerdy. It's Talkin Nerdy. It's Talkin Nerdy. They're talking nerdy. They're talking nerdy. They're talking nerdy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talkin Nerdy. And I'm really excited today for my guest to have Ify Nwadiwe on the show, who I've been such a fan of for a while between all of the different projects that you've done. So just excited to have you here and talk about all of this.
Oh, excited to be here. And it's so nice to digitally meet you, be face to face. How you feeling?
It's November. It's getting to be that time of year.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, it's the perfect time of year to stay inside and play video games and play some table games and all of that stuff. So there's still some things to do.
Oh, yeah, I know. This is the time of year that keeps D&D groups together, because that friend without a heater needs that 3 to 4 hours in a well-warmed house. It's just his dice or ice cubes as he rolls it out of the pack. And you're just smiling like, yeah, no, nothing came up this time, huh?
I mean, you're right. Jokes aside, it is really, I think, a respite for people, for whatever they might be dealing with, to kind of sink into a game and, all of that. I mean, I know that's been my experience.
Oh, yeah, of course. When you was like, I got fake problems right now, so I don't have to worry about the real ones. That's the dream. You're just like, I'm gonna ignore the real problems so I can solve the fake ones. And I solved them, very, very quickly, adequately. I'm competent in this world. Let's rock.
Yes, I find that I am much better at solving my fake problems than I am at solving my real ones.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For something about, letting the dice handle it. My luck is better, because it's all luck in the end, but the luck with the die is better than just real life luck, I guess.
Yes, as random as that may be. Now, yeah. I'm really curious, because I kind of want to go back. I mean, I think, I love your story of how you came to all of this, especially because as somebody who, I think for most of us who have spent some period of our lives being pressured to be something that we don't necessarily want to be, that we don't feel is authentically us, that we finally get that moment where we're like, okay, I'm making this decision, I'm going to be authentically myself. I think when you've gone through that, you then are so fiercely authentic that, that just carries through everything that you do. So, I mean, that's why I think I'm drawn to your story, because it's definitely not the same type of story, but I feel that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because everyone has their own path, but I think the core of everyone's path is the moment you start being true to yourself. Because, I started on my, comedy, acting, writing journey, at UCB, and kind of going off of the influences I had, the Donald Glovers who came up through the UCB system, everyone through SNL. And I think when you first learn, new skills and talents, it's easier to kind of follow in someone else's footsteps and kind of replicate. If you ever watch someone starting off doing stand-up or starting off with music, they're kind of just doing a version of their favorite person. A stand-up will sound like their favorite stand-up at the time. A guitarist will sound like their favorite guitarist. And you get caught because it's kind of tricky, because when you're trying to break into these spaces, these creative industries, you're like, well, it worked, for these people. And so that's what you're looking for. And so you're starting off in a place where you're learning through following through footsteps, then doing the mental math, thinking, well, that's what you want, this version of a thing, because we've seen it work. And you fall into a trap of trying to do something that's already been done. If I can't be Donald Glover because there already is a Donald Glover, and the Donald Glover shaped hole in the Junji Ito mountain is already being filled and wiggled down by him. And you need to find the U-shaped hole to do that. And I think that it all happened with the nerdy stuff. I think, the nerdy things are what helped me find my comedic voice, my writing voice, because that's where the authenticity started. Because, I was going through, the comedy system out here. I was, starting to write and learning how, TV writing works and everything. And at the same time, I was coming up through Geek and Sundry. And the fun thing about, video games and tabletop RPGs is there's really kind of like at the time, especially when like there was that boom with nerdy stuff, Geek and Sundry, Nerdist, and you had SourceFed before that and so on and so forth. There wasn't, many archetypes. So you just had to do what you knew best, because a lot of us grew up nerdy and you're like, well, I'm just doing me. I'm playing tabletop the way I would play it. I would make the references I'm going to reference. I'm going to make the jokes playing video games I would make. And it forced me to be authentic because there was no one I can tap into. And there's a beautiful thing about authenticity is people connect to that. And with that, you feel that acceptance because you're like, oh, yeah, I feel connected with people and people are connecting with this version of me. Then I should let this version of me out more. I should talk. I should feel more free. And you kind of unravel to a point where you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You are yourself. You've kind of committed to being yourself. And you know that if you go against that, people will be able to tell, because you've already shown folks who your true self is. So that is kind of how the authenticity side of the journey, came about. And the regular beats are just the ones I've said before, going through UCB, connecting with great comedians there, meeting comedians who have put me in the position to audition for great roles or submit a packet for writing shows, writing on that, and also a huge collaboration. The whole Geek and Sundry journey started from me meeting Zach Eubank, and I was doing this thing called Socialtron Live, connecting, with him because they were like, oh, if you know any other nerds, let me know. And I was like, I know nerds. And him learning how to run a Twitch channel via Socialtron Live, then going on when Geek and Sundry said, hey, we want to do a Twitch channel. He's like, well, guess what? I know how to do it. Hey, Ify, do you want to be one of the hosts here? And then it just, the snowball happens from there. And so many great folks came out of that. And it all just started from a simple idea of, hey, I know someone else who's nerdy who would be great here. And he was like, yeah, I learned a skill and now I'm going to, pay it forward almost. So yeah, it really is just, I think, collaboration and being your true authentic self can get you so far.
Absolutely. And I think for me, I mean, maybe not everybody is this way, but when I watch any kind of content, if somebody does, if they are authentic and they're just being their true self, I am so much more drawn to that and want to watch that person more than I would be if it was somebody who like clearly is putting on a front. And, I think that's why I love these spaces so much and this content, whether it be things that Geek and Sundry has done, what Critical Role has done, what Dropout has done, is there's so many folks who fit that mold of like, they're so authentic for better or for worse. Like they are who they are. And I love that. And it's so many people that I feel like if I met them on the street, like we would be great friends. And so that's what I think is great about this space in general.
Oh yeah. It's very fun, meeting so many folks and, for all the, warranted bad rap the internet gets, I think back to, the early stages of the internet, those AOL, America Online days, those Net Zero days, when you were kind of, and I think there was something to it, but I think you were kind of dealt the hand you were dealt. You grew up around who you grew up around, and if you were unfortunate enough to be in a community where no one liked the things that you liked, then you just kind of had to live with that within yourself. And, there's still the side of me. I think the best example of that is like, yeah, I connected with folks who, on other things, like I had lots of friends who played video games. I had lots of friends who were like kind of into comic books, but I didn't really have any tabletop friends. Like I talked to my friends like Brennan and Abria who say, they were sitting at the table with folks and learning the game. And because no one in my community played Dungeons and Dragons, I didn't play till I was 18. And then I got, sucked in and wrapped up. And so now we live in this era where if you're, 14, 16, even 18, and there's no one around you who wants to play D&D, you can connect with people online, have these games on Discord, have long running home games. Brennan moved across the country and was able to keep his home game going because the technology and the connection is there. So it's a whole new dynamic. But I think because of that, there are just so many, it's easier to connect with people who like the same thing. There was once upon a time, it was like, oh, it's wild that you're this, this nerdy dude who likes lifting heavy things, and who does that? Now there are people who are like, I love you, Ify, because you're like, I thought I was the only guy who likes lifting weights and being nerdy. I think that's dated at this point. There are so many nerdy beefcakes, out there. But I do think, on the cusp and the precipice, because I was always, when you're a nerd, I often describe it as nerd traits. There are some people who never play D&D, never watched the Star Wars, not into comics, not into video games, but are complete nerds. They're nerds about football. They're nerds about golf. They're nerds about, extreme sports. They're nerds about wine. They're like, being nerdy is like more of a trait than a simple genre or niche. It is a approach to your fandoms. And I think that is a connective tissue that allows us to connect, which is why you can have people who might not be into the same nerdy things, but get that urge, that desire to learn more of it.
Yeah, that is so well put, actually. Because that's very much my philosophy about like what nerdy means today. It certainly doesn't mean the same thing as it did when I was in high school. So it's kind of come a long way, and now it's very much a mainstream type of thing, even with D&D. I mean, at the level that it's gotten to at this point. I mean, I've been to a lot of conventions, and I swear Gen Con this year was like crazier than any convention that I've ever been to from any fandom.
Yes, I know. I was so bummed to miss it, but it seemed like this one was the one. And I think everything is growing, everything is becoming accessible. So it's not this mystery thing that, my Catholic church was handing leaflets out and saying that I couldn't do because it's a gateway to Satan. It is a cool thing that you've seen people take part of. And it was like, one thing I think about often is when Johnny Stanton brought me to Cleveland to play Dungeons and Dragons with some of his Browns players at the time. It was me, Abria, Johnny, Miles Garrett, Wyatt Teller, Brandon the DM, and we're all in this this room, and it was split where it was like half D&D fans, half football fans. And at the end, everyone liked it. It wasn't like they were just like, oh, it came for the football players and was bored the whole time. They understood it because it is just an extension of the oldest form of entertainment, which is storytelling.
It is. And I think it's the best kind of storytelling. I mean, some of the campaigns that I've watched, especially of course, the mainstays Critical Role and Dimension 20 have done. I remember watching Fantasy High, like that first season, and I was so emotionally affected so many times during that story. And I'm just like, why do I feel like this? I mean, the characters are so well crafted. And I think like even pairing that into The Legend of Vox Machina, for example, to have that as a TV show, it's one of the best shows that I've ever watched, period. And that comes from a D&D game. So to me, that's crazy.
Oh yeah, the D&D table is more similar to TV writing than people think. You know, you are a bunch of people at the table pitching jokes, and you know, it is more segmented and formulaic at times, but it is the same idea where a group of people are at a table adding to a story that will be told. And yeah, and it's very fun to see the simplest form is just being true to your characters. We just got done doing a season of D20 not too long ago. And someone at the table, you know, did a move that they, you know, wanted to apologize for because they felt like it stepped over something that I was trying to do in the story. But it was it was so much better for the story to have this very real moment with the characters and then the aftermath of these two characters kind of dealing with that than it was to let my goofy idea happen and roll the dice and see if, you know, Brennan allows it to happen, you know? So I think that the instincts that people have when they're at the actual play table versus maybe a home game where you're like, well, we're doing this for fun, so I'm gonna do the more fun thing, is kind of more focused on storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, one thing with D&D that I've found interesting lately is because I've always looked at it and thought, well, in order to have a really good story, you have to have this full campaign, you know, where it's like hours and hours. And yes, like that can certainly produce a good story. But I was fortunate enough to be involved in a one shot that they were doing for the Daisy Quest, you know, promotions and things like that with Sandeep and with Omar Najam. And it was a one shot. It was just a few hours. And by the end of it, we were all like, wow, like what just happened? That was really good. Like everybody involved just really put a lot into that very short story.
Yes, I know. It's just, it feeds into it. I think all it takes is one person at the table to lock in and everyone else will. Like I've done a few tables where it's been folks I might not have known as well, or folks that have just kind of been put together. And the difference in when you just start to do a voice instead of, and no one was planning to do voices, but simply someone doing it. There have been times where either you'll have someone who doesn't do a voice at first and then eventually kind of like gets into the story and does it. You'll have people who are like, I'm not going to do a voice and I'm cool. And then you have people who immediately jump on board and they're like, yes, okay, I feel free because I kind of wanted to do a voice, but I didn't want to be the only one who did a voice. And now I see that you did a voice. So now I feel comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty amazing how that kind of develops, you know, and it, like you said, you're right. I mean, sometimes for people that maybe aren't as experienced, they may be hesitant to push it and go the extra mile with it. But I think that's one of the best things about the community in general is that there's such a level of inclusivity that you don't feel like out of place. You feel pretty comfortable almost right away. And, you know, going back to that authenticity is like, you feel like you can be yourself and you feel like you can do what you want to do with your character and you're not going to be judged for whatever you decide to do with it.
Yes, exactly. It truly is like one of those great moments because once you're free to, you know, be whoever you want to be in the game, it helps you kind of sink into that character and be that character.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, of all the campaigns that you've done, do you have any particular either characters or campaigns that are favorites of yours that you just really enjoyed?
That's, you know, that is a very good question. That's always a hard one because I'd like to have like almost a little through line sometimes. I remember I was trying to have a money through line because when I was doing the critical rejects and was Ulfgar Fireforge, he was someone who was like always about his money. And then I had Marcus St. Vincent, who it was also someone who's like, I need to make sure I get my money. And so I wanted to cap that trilogy off with having a character who just does not care about money, who either starts off rich or is just very comfortable living off the land. And I have yet to finish that because other stories have called for different type of characters. But if I had to pick knee jerk, I'd probably say Marcus St. Vincent. That was like a fun dynamic. And I think that was probably my first, long running actual play character. So I really got to like fall in love with being Marcus and what he was into and learn about it. And then I did Broken Ring, and my character there is also Alric. It was also very interesting too. Like you get to kind of fall in the character, but I'll say my next favorite is going to be the character that is in the next D20 you see me in, which is going to be sometime next year. So so that's that's what I'll say. My next D20 character, probably my favorite. It holds a special place in my heart.
Well, now I'm definitely gonna have to watch that one. Another thing that I'm curious about, because I mean, I think most people know that you have got to both play actually and also host actually. Which do you prefer?
Man, it's funny, being on both sides of it, and I think that the hosting it is so fun. It is a good time. It's good to be in Mike's chair and see what that feels like. But like I have to win. I have to be the most winningest. I'm currently the most winningest. And as long as I stay out the hosting chair, I get to keep that going because I will stop at nothing to keep racking up those dubs. So very so that's I think with that statement, playing is the favorite for me.
I'm curious though, is it just winning in general or specifically to make sure that you win more than Brennan?
Win more than Brennan, definitely. We all know what the slogan of last season was, and I hold strong to it. But it is fun. It is fun kind of taking it way more serious than it needs to be, because actually is at its heart just a fun comedy show where we get to correct each other. But then there's nothing like taking something that's not supposed to be serious, super serious.
That is true. And as a person who is very competitive myself, there's obviously a line. You still have to have fun, but sure, it's nice to win.
Yeah, it's a good time. You get that chance to to kind of like gloat in your friend's face because that friend is also one of the only few people who takes it as seriously as you. So you're like, yeah, we take it seriously, and I'm the one who's winning the most.
That is true. So I don't know if Brennan would be watching this, but if Brennan's watching this, Ify won the most. So
yeah, it's there. You can go. I'm actually .info. It has the stats. We're not doing win percentage. We're not doing any of these NBA stats. It is most wins, period. Don't try and do averages based on appearances. We all had the same viable time to come do the show.
Absolutely. So another thing that I'm curious about is that, if you having done so much of the D&D world, is there any like campaign setting or any world that you've ever thought about making into a game that you haven't been able to do? Like, is there any idea floating around in your head that was like, this would be a great idea for a campaign, but just hasn't been done?
Ooh, I mean, this one isn't one that necessarily hasn't been done, but I do like, there's a lot of great mech RPG systems, but they tend to be very crunchy. So my like, and I say this as someone who's like actively working on this, but just kind of like a smoother kind of transitional, because I think, the mech nerds love a crunchy game. And I think the kind of like crossover issue that we're having with people who like making actual plays versus people with home games that can play at any speed that they want is there needs to be a little more streamlined. So that is my goal, is to make kind of a more streamlined, lighter kind of mech tabletop system. And I do have the bones of it. Showed it to my good buds, and everyone seems into it. So let's see how long it'll take for me to actually finish it.
I mean, that sounds really cool. So I'm looking forward to that. Really, there's a lot of good like ideas and different platforms and things like that coming out, things that I wouldn't have even thought about. Because kind of tying into, I know that you do the film podcast, or have
Maximum Film,
exactly.
Yeah,
what, like, that made me think of again the kind of the mini campaign that I just did, where it's this system of gosh, why can't I think of the name of it right now? Basically it's based off of pulp 80s films and stuff like that, like Indiana Jones and things of that nature. And you can play as a scholar or a scoundrel or a scallywag. And like, you have these three choices and these three paths you can take. And I found that so interesting, and I loved it. And I wanted to play more because I think having that movie idea like tied into it is a really interesting mechanic. And so, I was curious to kind of like get your thoughts, because I know you're kind of a movie buff as well.
Yeah. Like anything that can kind of like make it more cinematic sucks you right in. Like that's exactly the world you want to live in, is like where you can see what's happening. And, especially like with so many DMs being great at just coloring that scene so that you can make the jump, and it's like almost referential. So you kind of what's the word I'm looking at? But you kind of populate the world and build the playground in your head, and it just gets you to sink into the character more. Like that's what I think of when that happens.
And I mean, I think that ties into what you were saying earlier about, doing a D&D game is very similar to like sitting in a room writing a script or something like that. It's a bunch of people just collaborating together. And I think that's adding that extra mechanic into it and making it like a movie really kind of takes that a little bit further even.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think it really colors the whole theater of the mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm curious, and I'm sure for all the people out there, what are you, currently working on or have upcoming in the works?
Well, if anyone saw the 5-year Dropout anniversary, there were a lot of shows announced. Sam has confirmed himself, Sam Reich, that I'm in a bunch of them. So that's that's what I'm cooking on, getting ready to compete in this next season of actually, I think Trap said on Reddit, that we're getting in November, they're gonna start back up. And I'm excited to retain my title.
You got to keep rocking up those wins.
Yeah. So really, it's I wanted to say it's going to be a whole bunch of training, but it's not. I just kind of show up and get ready to go. I don't do any type of anything. I just show up, get ready to catch Trap saying something in a way where I can deconstruct it and figure out what's wrong.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. And actually that ties into my last question that I had, having been a part of Dropout considerably, in the more recent years and stuff. What do you think is about it for you that has made it so wildly successful? I mean, like, it almost was not even, it was almost gone. And like now I think it's more popular than ever. I mean, for me personally, and I said this when I talked to Amy Vorpal, I think it's the content that Dropout is putting out is better than anything Saturday Night Live has done in a long time. So I mean, for you, what do you think is about it that makes it that way?
Yeah, you're kind of along for the ride in a lot of the shows when you think of like Dirty Laundry and Make Some Noise that are like derivative from Game Changer, and you have these recurring D20 seasons, and you have recurring guests from Actually and Bits. There is like a familiarity of the things that you already like, and then the new things that are being introduced are just coming from that same thought process of, okay, the things y'all like is some of your favorite, comedians coming together to do goofy things that'll make you laugh, and just, repeating that, just having that going. And I think that's what made it. I think the meta side too, which I told Sam, is just the transparency of it. I think when Dropout first came out, there were a lot of SVOD platforms that have came before it. And I think one of the hardest things to do is, while it on paper extremely makes sense why companies would need another source of income, I think on the consumer side, the fans always feel like, oh, this is something I used to watch for free because of ads, and now you're asking me to pay for it. And you can promise all these other things, but if it feels like a thing that could just be another YouTube show, they feel like, oh, I'm not getting what I want. And I think, Dropout in their first launch video with Sam walking around the office and being like, hey, YouTube ads aren't giving us enough money. That's why we're asking for money. We're going to eventually release some of it on YouTube, but we're going to have to pay wallet so we can pay the bills and pay the performers. And I think that transparency really paid off for Dropout. And it seems like a lot of folks resonated with that. And I think they felt connected with the brand and the comedians behind it because of that. And I think I see it in, the dope people I meet who come to shows or at a con who, they really do support the brand as a whole and like what we're doing. So it has to be that, the transparency. And I think kind of starting where we started this conversation of just being hyper authentic and connecting with that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like I said, I know that's a big part of what it is for me, but it may not be for everyone. But yeah, I mean, when you see people doing things and you're like, I don't think I ever watched Saturday Night Live and I was like, yeah, I could totally hang out with these people. It's kind of that where you feel like, hey, you feel like the people even though you don't.
Yeah, you're just kind of on board for it. And I think that's the big difference. I think that is what keeps people coming back, is they're very excited to support these people that they find pretty neat.
Yeah, 100%. So, let everybody know where they can find you on socials or anything else like that.
Oh yeah, you can find me on Ify Nwadiwe on a bunch of socials, Twitter, Instagram, and I think I'm Ify Comedy on Blue Sky if you're on there. But yeah, just stay tuned. I genuinely am excited for all of the new fun things Dropout is coming out with. The thing that we shot, I don't know if we said exactly what it was, so I won't say what it was, but I know that Paul shared an image of the thing that we shot. And that was really exciting. I thought it was great. I hope y'all all enjoy it. It truly was some of the most fun that we got into. Game Changer is already shot out. You may or may not see me in the next season of that. I can confirm you're going to see me holding it down for all the Ify Nation who is standing with me against the Brennan fans who want Brennan to beat me. I cannot let that happen. I apologize. And I think I did say that I'm going to be in a future season of D20. There were so many names of D20 seasons on the screen that I feel comfortable telling you that. So yeah, I guess, yeah, you got it. You got it first, Christine.
Hey, that's always exciting. But yes, everybody make sure that you follow Ify. Subscribe to Dropout if you haven't. It is worth every penny. You will not be sorry. And just keep following the content. It's super awesome. Yeah. So for my combat robotics fans that watch this, please check it out. It's like great comedy, great everything. So check that out and keep liking, subscribing, all of that good stuff. And we'll see everybody next time.
All right, I'll see y'all.